God said, I will have war with the Amalekites. They were the very first army that Israel faced as an army as they came out of Egypt. And throughout Israel's history, you see them robbing from the people of God. One of the definitions of the word Amalekite is plunderer. It's a bloodthirsty, it means blood liquor. It is a bloodthirsty, plundering spirit that wants to do everything that John 10:10 describes, that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And the Lord just really started leading me to. I'm in the currently writing a book on this subject about the Amalekites, and a lot of this, really comes out of a study that I've been doing for about 8 years. I've been living in the book of Esther, exactly what you're saying, Lou, and dealing with this issue of Haman. And on October the 6th, the night before, October the 7th, I was getting ready to preach at our own church at a Friday night service. And I had dusted off an old copy of my book on the Cyrus decree, which was written in the year 2000, which I believe is speaking about the season that we're in right now. Cyrus the Great was the one that was raised up at the time when it was the end of the Babylonian captivity. And he was a Persian. But he was led by the Spirit of God. God stirred up his spirit, Ezra 1 says, and he came in and he released all the Jewish captives that were held in Babylon for over 70 years. And the Lord said that it was time that we needed to again begin to activate the spirit of Cyrus that contended against a spirit that wanted to keep God's people under persecution, under harassment, under slavery. And then he lined out for me that he wanted me to begin to speak about the Prince of Persia spirit that we find in John chapter 10. And of course, we know that this is exactly what Jeremiah was saying. It's an ancient spirit, both the Amalekite spirit, the Prince of Persia spirit, and they meet together in the book of Esther. Of course, Haman was an Agagite, and Agag was the king of the Amalekites. And then there was a prevailing territorial spirit called the Prince of Persia, which we see so clearly in Daniel chapter 10. So I made preparation to preach on that night. And in the afternoon, I laid down and took a little nap. And when I woke up from the nap, I never in my life have I felt this, but I felt like I was having a panic attack. I felt like I was overwhelmed with fear, with trauma, with grief. I couldn't catch my breath. I had my husband come in and begin to pray. And I said, this isn't about me. Something's happening. And I had him pray for me. Even that night we went to service and we were in our worship time and I could not catch my breath. I felt like whatever was getting ready to happen was so horrifying that we needed a call to prayer. And of course, we know what happened that next day. And so I think it was very interesting that when we really talk about both the Amalekite spirit and this spirit of the Prince of Persia, we have to understand that Persia became a dominating force in the earth from the time that Cyrus released the captives. So that means that everything that we read in our Bibles from Esther, Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, most of the minor prophets, all the way to Malachi, was written during the time that there was a prevailing territorial spirit of the Prince of Persia under the rule of Persia. I believe that this is a spirit that gets raised up, and when it's bound, the people of God flourish. But when it is loosed, it becomes an opposing force to revival, to awakening, to reformation. I believe it was the spirit behind Ahasuerus in Esther chapter 4, when they were commissioned by Cyrus to go back and rebuild the temple. And of course, we're talking about great awakenings and we're talking about reformation in the church. It was the spirit behind Ahasuerus that said, you may not build, you have to stop the building. It was this, that's in the book of Ezra. It was the spirit behind Haman in the book of Esther. It was the spirit behind Sanballat and Tobiah in the book of Nehemiah. It was the spirit behind those that had Daniel thrown in the lion's den, every single point along the line, resisting reformation, resisting the people of God, anti-Semitic, anti-Christ. It was a territorial spirit that they had to contend with. And I think the Lord alerted me on October the 6th and said, it's rising up again, and we're going to have to fight against it again, just like Esther did in those days. I want to just take everybody back, those that may not have heard this. On June the 15th, 2022, the Lord spoke to me and said, in the middle of the night, he woke me up and he said, you've entered the time of the hanging of Haman's 10 sons. And I want to bring this into just a point of focus, because this battle is not just about Haman, because Haman was killed in Esther chapter 7. But in Esther chapter 8, Esther was still going before the king saying, can you please do something about this decree? We need to understand there's fatwas that are out there that are calling for the death of Jews wherever they can be found. And so the decree continued. So it wasn't just about taking out Haman. It was about taking out his lineage. It was about taking out and spoiling his house. It was about all of his children that would be then in a position to go and enforce the decree of death and destruction. And each one of their names actually means things like a spirit of religion, a spirit of anti-Semitism, a spirit of Antichrist, witchcraft, occult. All of these names actually tie into the Amalekite spirit because they're rooted in Persian names that actually mean to rob, to plunder, to seize, to grasp, to destroy. That all their names are rooted in these Persian names. Now, for the listeners that may not have made this connection yet, ancient Persia is modern day Iran. And I think it's very interesting for everybody to realize that it was called Persia until 1935. Who renamed it Iran? But Hitler, in coordination with the mullahs. And for those that are not aware, the word Iran means people of the Aryan race. That is what Iran means. And so we have to understand that the same spirit that was present in the book of Esther, the same spirit that was present in 1940 Jeremiah, is the exact same spirit we are dealing with today. Now, I'm going to wrap up my portion here by saying this. In the middle of the summer, Mike and Cindy, I told Tom, and I don't know if I made this statement publicly or not, but I did tell Tom and several of our leaders that I had this deep feeling that something was getting ready to take place in Israel. And my concern was that initially our nation would come out with very strong support for our ally, Israel. But as time went on, that our nation would slowly begin to back away from our unconditional support of Israel and even be in a position of breaking ties with Israel. And I think as America, if we're praying for America, obviously we need to pray that this is what ties into what Chuck is saying about how important it was for that speaker position to come into a place of focus. But my heart's cry, and added to everything else that has been shared about college campuses, and I've been deeply concerned. I heard one professor actually say he was exhilarated to hear of the Hamas attack on Israel and to hear of the details of what they committed. Exhilarated. This is the poison that is being spread on college campuses. But let's make it very, very clear. This is not just in our college campuses. It's in our government as well. And I believe we as the people of God must stay in a place of alignment with Israel. We must stay in a place that we are standing by their side. God will bless us as a nation as we stay in that covenant connection that God has established. I want to read just this little passage out of Esther, and I'm reading it out of the Message translation because this is what I've been saying ever since the Lord said that to me about the sons of Haman. It says, Haman, the son of Hammedatha, this is Esther chapter 9, verse 24, the arch enemy of all Jews, had schemed to destroy all Jews. He cast the lot to throw them into a panic and destroy them. But when Queen Esther, and that is us, right, Lou? We're Queen Esther. But when Queen Esther intervened with the king, he gave written orders that the evil scheme that Haman had worked out should boomerang back on his own head. He and his sons were hanged on the gallows. And that leads us into Purim. So I believe I've been decreeing a boomerang season. That actually is, you see actually in Esther chapter 8 and Esther chapter 9, that people in the land actually started turning their hearts towards Israel. The people that were bent on destroying Israel suddenly had this epiphany that they needed to stand with Israel, and they joined forces with Israel. People in the provinces were saying, we also want to become Jews. Governors, satraps, the government leaders that were opposed to the Jews that were in the land in that time turned around, started supporting the Jewish people. This is how I have been praying, is that they would have their eyes opened to see that those that stand with Israel are the ones that are going to come out on top. That the Amalekites embody the thief in Romans 10:10. I mean, in John 10:10, that he's come to steal, kill, and destroy. Every one of us are experiencing this and battling this on an individual level. I believe that we have to take the battle to the next level, which is a corporate level, and then again to a national level. And so we can see where the enemy wants to rob our children from us. He wants to rob our prosperity from us. He wants to rob our peace from us. He wants to cut off the generations. He wants to cut off nations. And I believe that we're in a season right now that God's raising up a company of people. And throughout the scripture, we've seen God raise up people that would stand against the work of the robber, the work of the plunderer, and that would take back and bring divine recovery of everything the enemy has stolen from us. It is a season of divine reversal, and it is a season of divine recovery. We just have to stay tuned into heaven, keep praying, keep prophesying, and I believe that we're going to see the overthrow of the things that the enemy has meant against us for evil. He's going to turn it for our good.